All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive.
Always ready to jump in.
Okay, cool. So today, we're taking a closer look at President Zelensky and Ukraine. It seems like every time we turn around, there's another twist in the story.
Yeah, I mean, the sources you said, they really highlight how this whole situation is a powder keg, right? Alliances shifting, power struggles, and then you have Zelensky right in the thick of it.
He's got to be feeling the pressure, right? I mean, trying to keep both President Trump and Putin happy, that's like trying to ride two horses at once.
And let's not forget about that meeting in the Oval Office. That didn't exactly go as planned, did it? Seems like President Trump wasn't too thrilled with how things went down.
Yeah, there were definitely some tense moments there. And now you've got these rumors swirling about a potential triple meeting. Trump, Putin, and Zelensky all in the same room. Can you imagine?
It'd be like a scene out of a movie, right? The tension, the stakes, the whole world watching.
And speaking of high stakes, we can't ignore what's happening in Kursk. Sounds like things are getting really, really heated over there.
Kursk's a flashpoint, no doubt about it.
Okay.
You got both sides pouring resources in, deploying their most advanced weaponry. This isn't just a border skirmish. This could be a major turning point in the whole conflict.
So how does this all tie in with President Trump's vision? This new world order he keeps talking about.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because the sources frame it as a direct challenge to this, well, they call it an activistocracy.
Activistocracy, what's that all about?
It's this idea that, well, according to the sources, activists, a lot of them detached from the realities on the ground, they've been driving global agendas for years. And Trump's America First approach, it's like a direct pushback against that whole system.
Okay, so help me understand this activistocracy a little better. The sources kept mentioning Ukraine. What did they mean by that?
They argue that Ukraine's become this, well, like a prime example of activist-driven policies. Specifically, this idea of Ukraine from the river to the sea, a unified Ukrainian-speaking nation.
Right, but how does that connect to Trump's new world order? Is he saying he sides with Russia on this?
It's not necessarily about siding with Russia, but more about acknowledging a shift in the balance of power. Trump's speech, it really points toward this move towards stronger leaders, a renewed focus on military strength, and a stepping back from globalist ideals. It's like he's saying America's not going to be the world policeman anymore.
So what does that mean for Europe? They're kind of stuck in the middle of all this, aren't they?
Yeah, Europe's in a tough spot. They're dealing with their own set of problems, the economy, social divisions, you name it. And their relationship with the U.S., well, it's definitely different under President Trump. He's made it pretty clear that he expects Europe to step up and take care of itself, both in terms of security and its own economy.
So where does that leave Zelensky and Ukraine? How do they fit into this whole shifting global landscape?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Zelensky's trying to juggle these relationships with President Trump, Putin, and a Europe that's still figuring out its own identity. He's walking a tightrope, trying to secure his country's future while navigating these really powerful forces.
Yeah, it sounds like he's playing a dangerous game, trying to keep everyone happy. Is that even sustainable?
It's definitely risky, no doubt about it. He's managed to secure some support, but the sources also talk about accusations of broken promises and a growing sense of unease, like people are losing faith. And then there's the whole Kursk situation. That's a powder keg just waiting to explode.
Yeah.
Any misstep there could have devastating consequences.
So like walking a tightrope over a bed of nails. Every move matters. Every decision has huge implications.
Exactly. And with President Trump reshaping the global chessboard, well, who knows what the next move will be. But before we jump ahead, let's unpack this activistocracy idea a bit more. It seems to be at the heart of a lot of these events. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot these days, but the sources, they seem to think it's more than just a buzzword, They're arguing that this activistocracy has real teeth, that it's shaping policies, maybe even driving these global conflicts.
The sources use the phrase, Ukraine, the country of triumphant activism.
Yeah.
What exactly did they mean by that?
Well, they kept coming back to this idea of Ukraine from the river to the sea. And their point was that this concept, it's like a product of this activistocracy, right? A vision pushed by groups with a very specific agenda. This idea of creating a Ukraine that speaks only Ukrainian, erasing any trace of Russian influence.
But isn't that a legitimate goal for a nation to have? To want to preserve its own culture, its own language?
Right. Sure, of course, protecting your heritage is important. But the sources, they were suggesting that the methods used in Ukraine, they've been divisive and maybe even backfired. They're arguing that this push for a solely Ukrainian-speaking nation, it's alienated a big chunk of the population and added fuel to the fire with Russia.
So are they saying that these activists were like intentionally trying to provoke Russia?
It's not about intention, really. It's about understanding the consequences, right? Their point was that these activist groups, maybe they had good intentions, but they didn't grasp the complexities of the situation in Ukraine. And their actions, even if they were trying to promote Ukrainian identity, they might have inadvertently created the conditions for conflict.
It makes you wonder, like, who really benefits from all this chaos? If it's not the people of Ukraine, then who is it?
That's the question, right? The sources definitely seem to imply that there are these bigger players at work using the situation in Ukraine to advance their own agendas. It's like this tangled web of global power moves, and it's hard to say for sure who's pulling the strings.
And President Trump's America First agenda, it's shaking things up even more. It feels like he's totally rejecting the old globalist system.
He's definitely charting his own course. The sources painted him as someone who he sees the world in terms of deals, leverage, putting American interests first, even if it ruffles some feathers.
But isn't that a risky move? Going it alone when the world's becoming more and more interconnected?
There are risks, sure. But the sources, their argument was that the old system, it wasn't working. They pointed to all the red tape, the policies that didn't deliver, the disconnect between the people in charge and the people they were supposed to represent.
So they're saying Trump's a disruptor, right? Shaking things up, trying to create a new world order on his own terms.
That's one way to put it. Whether this new order will be more stable or just create more chaos, well, time will tell.
And where does Europe fit into this whole thing? They seem to be caught between a rock and a hard place.
Europe's got some tough choices to make, that's for sure. The sources, they pointed out that Europe and the U.S., they're not exactly seeing eye to eye these days, especially with Trump's America First approach. And Europe's also got its own internal struggles, the economy, social divisions, and maybe this feeling that they've lost their place on the world stage.
So they need the U.S. for protection, but they also want to be independent, stick to their values. Not an easy balance to strike.
Definitely not. And with Trump telling Europe to step up, take more responsibility for their own defense and economy, they're having to face some hard truths about their role in the world.
And how's Zelensky dealing with all of this? It sounds like he's trying to walk this tightrope between Trump and Putin while also trying to keep Europe happy.
He's in a tricky spot, that's for sure. The sources even mentioned accusations of broken promises and the possibility of criminal charges against him. It makes you wonder if this is all part of some bigger power play.
It could be. Remember, President Trump isn't afraid to use pressure tactics to get what he wants.
True. But Zelensky, he's a savvy politician, too. He's shown he's not afraid to stand up to both Trump and Putin when he needs to.
So it's less about being a pawn and more about playing the game strategically, right? Trying to make the best moves he can in a difficult situation.
Exactly. And in this game, the stakes are incredibly high, not just for Zelensky and Ukraine, but for everyone.
A lot to think about, for sure. It's crucial to understand these dynamics if we want to make sense of what's going on in the world.
Absolutely. We can't just sit back and watch. The decisions being made today, they're going to shape the future, and we have a responsibility to try and understand the forces at play.
It is a lot to take in, but what really sticks with me is this renewed focus on military strength. It feels like we're going back to this might makes right mentality.
It is a worrying trend, especially when you look at what's happening in Kursk. The sources, they didn't paint a very optimistic picture of what could happen if things escalate there.
Yeah, and there's this feeling of inevitability, like these bigger forces are beyond our control.
That's a dangerous way to think. We can't just give in to fatalism. Even when we're facing huge challenges, we have to keep striving for a better future.
I hear you, but it's hard not to feel overwhelmed sometimes. Like, what can one person really do to change the course of history?
It starts with awareness. By understanding what's happening, we can start to see the cracks in the system, the places where our actions can actually make a difference.
So it's about more than just staying informed. It's about using that knowledge to empower ourselves and others to take action.
Exactly. Knowledge is power, but it's only truly powerful when it's used to create positive change.
I like that. It's a good reminder that even with all this chaos, we still have a choice. We don't have to just stand by and watch.
We shouldn't. The world needs people who are willing to think critically, challenge the status quo, and fight for what they believe in.
Subscribe to our podcast, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We are here to make things clear. New episodes every day.